Thank you. Thank you very much. The Principal Secretary, State Department for Basic Education, Ambassador Professor Julius Bitok. The Chairperson of the Kenya National Examinations Council, Professor Julius Nyabundi. The Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya National Examinations Council, Dr. David Njengere. The Chief Executive Officer of the Teachers Service Commission, Madam Evelyn Mitei. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, good afternoon. Good afternoon again. Let me first take the opportunity to thank all of you for making time to be here for the release of these results on behalf of the learners of Kenya. I'm honored to speak to you today as we mark the successful completion of the first cohort of the competency-based education learners from junior school. This is a milestone that ushers in significant transformation as we continue to progressively implement the competency-based education system. As you will recall, the government commenced the implementation of the competency-based education system in 2017. The CBE follows the structure of 2 years in pre-primary, 6 years in pre-primary school, and 3 years in junior school, and another 3 years in senior school. CBE is a transformative educational framework designed to equip our learners with the skills, values, and attitudes necessary to thrive in the 21st century. The Kenya Junior School Education Assessment is a key assessment tool at the end of junior school to evaluate learners' competencies and guide their transition to senior school. The assessment is a significant milestone in the implementation of the competency-based education. This assessment goes beyond what you know as traditional examinations. It focuses on identifying learners' strengths, aptitudes, and interests, ensuring that every child is placed in an environment where they can excel and realize their full potential. The purpose of KJSEA is threefold. Number one, it is to evaluate the learner's achievements of competencies acquired during junior school. Number two, it is to provide feedback for placement into senior school pathways, the STEM, the arts and sports science, and social sciences. And number three, it is to support progression and planning aligned with learners' strengths and interests. The KJSEA summative assessment consists of written papers and dry practicals or projects. Most subjects had a single paper, while languages, integrated science, and other subjects had 2 papers due to the composition, practical, or project components. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, I'd like to extend my heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to the officials from the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, the Ministry of ICT, the Teachers Service Commission, and other stakeholders who have played a vital role in the successful administration of this year's assessments and examinations. I wish to thank all center managers, the supervisors, and invigilators for upholding the integrity of our examination and assessment system. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report that all the learners who registered and presented themselves for the 2025 KJSEA and key player assessments successfully sat the assessments despite a few challenges that were appropriately addressed by our field personnel. As you know, parts of our country experienced heavy rains and swollen rivers, which rendered some roads impassable. There was an unfortunate incident of a landslide in Elgeyo Marakwet, and these emergencies necessitated contingency measures to ensure that all candidates sat the examinations and assessments. Special arrangements were also made for a few hospitalized learners to sit the examinations and assessments. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are releasing the 2025 KJSEA results for 1,130,459 learners, all of whom will be placed in appropriate pathways at senior school to lay the foundation for the pursuit of careers of their choice. Of the 1,130,459 learners who sat the 2025 KJSEA, 578,630 were male, while 551,829 were female, representing 51.19% and 48.81% of the total learners, respectively. The counties that registered the highest number of learners for KJSEA was as follows: Nairobi, 71,022; Kakamega, 59,384; Nakuru, 54,028. 41 counties had a significant entry of more male than female candidates, while Mombasa County is the only county that achieved a gender parity of 50% proportion for male and female learners. The 5 counties of Isiolo, Nairobi, Samburu, Marsabit, and West Pokot had a significant entry of more female than male candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, the majority of the learners who sat for the 2025 KJSEA, that is 642,620 learners, which is 56.84%, were within the appropriate age range of 14 to 15 years. The number of underage learners, that is 13 years and below, stood at 35,270, which is 3.12%, while those aged 16 and 17 years were 415,059, making 36.71%. Learners aged over 18 years and above, these are adults, were 37,638, constituting 3.33% of the candidature. Kilifi County recorded the highest proportion of overage learners, that is, those aged 16 and above, at 64.90%, followed by Kwale at 64.78%, Garissa 63.38%, Taita Taveta 62.06%, and Mandera at 62.05%. Baringo County had the highest percentage of underage learners, that is, learners aged 13 years and below, at 10.10%, followed by Bomet 7.56%, Marsabit 7.48%, Narok 7.28%, and Kericho 7.25%. Ladies and gentlemen, from the inception of the competency-based assessment, the reporting of learners' performance uses performance levels of exceeding expectation, meeting expectation, approaching expectation, and below expectation. The metric on grading at KJSEA has taken a similar approach, with each level being further divided into 2, hence an 8-point scale. The reporting of performance of KJSEA has thus been done from point 1 to point 8, where point 8 is the best at exceeding expectation 1, and point 1 is the least at below expectation 2. The creation of these bands serves to distinguish exemplary performance from good performance. Ladies and gentlemen, out of the 12 subjects offered at KJSEA, 7 subjects recorded a higher proportion of learners performing at meeting expectations and exceeding expectations. These were Hindu religious education at 84.62%, integrated science 61.77%, social studies at 58.56%, creative arts and sports at 58.04%, Kiswahili at 57.98%, Christian religious education at 53.96%, and agriculture at 52.26%. 75% of learners performed at approaching expectation and above across all subjects. Creative arts and sports registered the strongest performance, with 96.84% of learners attaining approaching expectations and 2 above, followed by agriculture at 96.2%, Kiswahili at 93.11%, and social studies at 92.93%. An approaching expectation grade is sufficient for learners to progress to senior school pathways that require basic competencies in the subject areas. Female learners outperformed male learners in the proportion meeting and exceeding expectations in 10 subjects out of the 12 subjects. The widest gender gap was observed in Kiswahili at 64.86% versus 51.41%, followed by CRE at 59.77% versus 48.39%, English 52.86% versus 48.45%, and social studies at 62.98% versus 54.35%. Of concern, however, are mathematics and the Kenya Sign Language, which recorded 32.44% and 22.14% of the learners performing at meeting and exceeding expectation, respectively. Of the 1,130,459 candidates who sat for the 2025 KJSEA, 59.09% have demonstrated potential to pursue the STEM pathway at senior school. 46.52% have demonstrated capacity to pursue the social science pathway, and 48.73% the arts and sports pathway. Ladies and gentlemen, the next important step is a placement and transition of learners to senior school. Learners will be placed to senior schools based on their performance and selected pathways, in line with the recommendations of the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform. The assessment of learners at grade 9 comprised 20% from the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment, 20% from the school-based assessment in grade 7 and 8, and 60% summative evaluation at grade 9. This summative evaluation is the KJSEA. As you already know, we clustered current schools based on the pathways that they will offer. This formed the basis of the selection of schools that learners and parents undertook earlier this year. As we speak today, the total capacity of the 9,540 senior schools is 2.2 million learners. A total of 929,262 learners will be exiting secondary school after the KJSEA this year. Senior schools will therefore have an extra classroom left by the fact that we'll only have 3 classes at this level. These classrooms are expected to provide extra space, enabling us to avoid overcrowding. We therefore have more than enough capacity to accommodate the learners whose results we are releasing today. The placement exercise will start next week and is expected to be completed by the 20th of December 2025. Grade 10 learners will be expected to report to their respective senior schools starting from the 12th of January 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, to foster access to basic education, the government will continue to provide capitation at the approved rate of 22,200 244 per learner per year in senior school. At the same time, we wish to emphasize, for the avoidance of doubt, that there has not been any revision of boarding fees or any other fees payable by learners in our schools. The prevailing guidance from the Ministry of Education on the amounts payable will continue to apply, as has been the case. Ladies and gentlemen, individual 2025 KJSEA assessment result will be accessed online through the link https://kjsea.nec.ac.ke. Learners will be required to enter the assessment number and any one of the names as per their registration data for the 2025 KJSEA assessment. The results will be accessible immediately after this function. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my humble duty and privilege to declare the 2025 KJSEA assessment results officially released. And I wish all the learners and their families success in their future endeavors. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you. Mungu awabariki. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, CS, for presiding over that release. I will now kindly request if we can step here.
Yes.
We ceremoniously hand over the results.
Yes.
I'll do that to my chairman, and then the chairman will hand it to the PS, and the PS will hand to the Congress.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a document in here that will be given just now. It has all the information that you require to answer all your questions that you might have relating to this exercise. So thank you very much for participating in this exercise. We appreciate it. If they have any questions, you can take, any clarifications, you can do that. But even before you do that, we just want to say that what we're going to do is once the placement starts, because this is the very first time.
The mic, sir. You need to go back to the seat. They're requesting that.